This is a CBS News special report. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
Good morning. This is Dan Rather in New York with live coverage of the second day of extraordinary hearings on the confirmation of Judge Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court. Judge Thomas is to take the witness stand again. First this morning, he will continue his denial of sexual harassment charges brought by his former aide, Anita Hill. Thomas is to be followed by a string of witnesses called by both sides to attest to the two principals' characters and to their veracity. Now, we want to strongly caution parents. This is a strong caution for parents that if today's testimony is anything like yesterday's, there may once again be extremely graphic testimony that you may not want your children to watch. You may want to think about that. Joining me here in New York is my old friend and chief Washington correspondent, Bob Schieffer. Bob, good to have you this morning. And with us at the hearings in Washington, law correspondent Rita Braver. Rita, good morning.
Good morning, Dan.
On the front page in the New York Times, John Apple, their lead correspondent in Washington, pretty much took the line that Thomas yesterday prevailed, and it's going to be very difficult for any senator now to vote against Thomas. Now, without saying whether I agree with that or not, when a paper such as the New York Times has it on the front page by a correspondent such as R.W. Johnny Apple Jr., is that the prevailing view in Washington?
At this point, I think a lot of people think that there is an equal chance that this thing could come out either way. I just was down outside of Senator Danforth's office where there are a lot of people who were saying that, yes, Thomas has the momentum, but there is also another view, and that is that Anita Hill's testimony yesterday was so graphic that it will make a lot of senators not be able to face women voters in their districts if they vote for him.
Has there been any talk of fairness or unfairness in the hearings? For example, I have heard from some women, by no means all that I've talked to, that, well, Senator Biden, when the going got tough in the questioning of Clarence Thomas, Biden allowed it to be cut off. The Republicans came in and cut it off, whereas with Anita Hill, that Senator Biden allowed them to ask her very difficult questions indeed. Do you hear that kind of talk around Washington, or is it in an opposite direction?
No, I absolutely hear that kind of talk, but I hear it on both sides. Each side seems to think that they have been put at some kind of disadvantage by unfairness by the committee. So you're hearing a lot of griping around here. And I also think that what is happening is that people are exhausted. This has been an incredible week, the likes of which none of us have seen in Washington, and tempers are flaring. I've seen a few people actually get into little confrontations with each other off to the sides, or people not talking to each other. You have a very exhausted group up here.
Bob Schieffer, we've been talking some overnight and this morning about how this is the first time that you've had, quote, the women's movement in opposition to, quote, at least part of the civil rights movement. First time in American politics I can remember that happening.
Well, I think that's exactly right, and that is why this is so different. We don't always like to say it, but race has always been a very important and a significant part of American politics. Now, gender has become an important part and a significant part of American politics, and now these two movements have, in effect, run head-on. So there's a lot to sort out here. Is Clarence Thomas going to be confirmed? I'll tell you, Dan, this is so different and so unusual. I don't think anybody can say at this point. And how different is it? Let me just go back to the words you used at the start of this broadcast. We want to warn parents that what they may hear might be offensive to their children. Have you ever begun a broadcast of a Senate hearing with those kind of words?
No, never.
It seems to me that that illustrates and underlines just how very different this is. I can't recall, and I must have said 20 times yesterday, anything like this. After sleeping on it overnight and thinking about it, I'll say it again. I still can't recall anything like this.
Well, Rita Braver, Bob raises a good point, that it's in some ways, quote, the women's movement versus, quote, the civil rights movement, but civil rights advocates themselves are split on support for Thomas or belief in Anita Hill.
That's right. And, you know, I have been talking to a lot of women law professors, black law professors, who have told me that some of them even were in support of Thomas, but they have really changed their mind because of this incident, and now they have such reservations they think he should never be confirmed. Other people have said to me that perhaps Thomas is the one who is being treated unfairly here. It's made them think it the other way. But I do think that there is division within the black community itself on this, and some people have said that men are beginning to argue with women over this because, and this is a very sensitive point, that some black women think that black men do not respect them as much as they respect other women. And this has been a subject of great sorrow, great delicacy, but I have to say that it has been out there. It has been raised with me by several women.
CBS News White House correspondent Susan Spencer joins us now this morning live from the White House. Susan, the mood after Thomas's testimony last night, improving?
Well, Dan, you've stood on this very same lawn and listened to lines coming out of the White House. But in this case, I think the line is the absolute truth. They are delighted with Thomas's performance last night. They felt that the whole dynamic of the hearing changed. I think it was perhaps even more so than they expected. And this was based on two things. First of all, they felt to refute those individual charges, the very charges that led us to issue a warning at the beginning of this broadcast. They thought Clarence Thomas needed to respond to. And Senator Hatch graciously gave him the opportunity to do that. Secondly, there was a feeling that he needed to shock, just like Anita Hill did, in order to get the country's attention, in order to get the attention of the Senate. And finally, that he needed to completely discredit the committee. And if there is an underlying strategy out of this White House, it is to totally discredit that committee. One thing that spokesman Marlon Fitzwater told us last night with some delight was that the calls that were coming into the White House were overwhelming, not overwhelming for Thomas or for Professor Hill, but overwhelmingly against the committee. And that seemed to provide him with a great deal of solace.
Well, I think that any of us who covered Washington know that phone calls can be orchestrated. That's not to say that yesterday's telephone calls were orchestrated. It's simply to note that orchestrated phone calls to the White House, whether the White House is occupied by a Democrat or a Republican, sort of goes to the territory of covering it. Susan, let me ask you this. Is it still President Bush's view that Clarence Thomas is the best man in the United States for the Supreme Court? I ask that because I hear people who support Thomas look at the hearings. It's true, they're disgusted with the committee. In many ways, they're disgusted with the press and with us, but who also say, I'm beginning to doubt whether this is the absolute best man in America for the United States Supreme Court. Is it still the president's view that he is?
Absolutely. And while there may have been some days when you might have eked out some sort of doubt out of somebody here, this is not one of them. They do not feel at the moment that they are the underdog. And so the complete consensus out of this White House at the moment, and I think it's quite honest, is that Clarence Thomas will be confirmed, they feel, at least at this point. And the president has repeatedly said that he should be and that he is, in fact, the best qualified. So they're not budging at all, Dan.
Bob Schieffer, there has to be a sense among the senators themselves that what George Bush, the president, and the people around him done have, in a way, put the Senate on trial, not Clarence Thomas.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about that, and I think each and every one of them feel that. And I must say, right now, I just find very little good that can be said about what's happening, regardless of the charges. I mean, how did it get to this? I don't know what Senate confirmation hearings are supposed to be, but it seems to me they ought not to be this. I don't know how it got to this point. I mean, how could the investigation not have uncovered these things? How could all of this not have been resolved one way or the other, that suddenly we're treated to hour upon hour of this lurid testimony and conversation? Is this what getting into the government is all about, or not all about? The old saying, you know, I don't know what pornography is, but I'll know it when I see it. I don't know what a confirmation is, but I'm convinced that this is not the way to go about it. I think the whole process is on trial, and I think it's gone badly off the tracks.
Rita Braver, clearly somebody is lying. Either Clarence Thomas is lying or Anita Hill is lying. I know in Washington, as in other places, we've gone to a language in which no one wants to use the word lie or lying. People engage in disinformation or they dissemble now. But in this case, somebody is lying.
That's absolutely true. And today we're going to hear from witnesses who try to say that Anita Hill is telling the truth. We are also going to hear from witnesses who say that Anita Hill could not possibly be telling the truth. One of the first witnesses who will corroborate Anita Hill is a law school professor from here at American University by the name of Joel Paul. And he has said that in 1987, when he was interviewing her for a job at American University, he took her out to lunch and he talked to her and he asked her why she left the EEOC. And he said at that point she told him that she was sexually harassed. He could not remember whether or not she mentioned the name of Thomas, but he then said to her, well, why didn't you complain about it? And he says he has told his friends that she basically said that you have to understand what the atmosphere was like there. I was very young at the time. He says he has told his friends that he was so shaken by this that he actually went in and talked to a woman colleague who teaches in this area because he's a business professor. He's not in the area of civil rights or civil liberties. And he says that this other law professor raised his consciousness about an issue that he has never thought of before. So he could be a powerful witness on her behalf. You are also going to see some people who talk about Clarence Thomas's character, who have worked with him, and who are going to say, this man could not have done this. He was incapable of it. I'm not sure that you're going to know, again, after all of these witnesses, who to believe.
Joining us now in our Washington bureau is law professor Pat King of Georgetown University, who opposes the nomination of Clarence Thomas, and Bruce Fine, a constitutional scholar, until recently worked for the Heritage Foundation and a self-described conservative. Good morning. Thanks for being with us. First, Professor King, the consensus, if you read the New York Times and to a degree the Washington Post this morning, is that Clarence Thomas has seized the initiative, is on the offensive, on a roll, and unless something really drastic happens from here on out, he's likely to be confirmed. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I think that Clarence Thomas did a very good job of last evening when he came in and was indignant and hurt, and that certainly showed. I think it helped him. And he did what we all agree makes sense, is to attack the Senate. That said, the issue still is Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas, and it's a question of the credibility of both of them. And either she's telling the truth or she's a sociopath. And so far, it seems to me she doesn't look like the latter. But I think we have to wait and see what develops with the witnesses today before we can get a more accurate assessment of how to deal with their credibility.
Well, Professor King, you say that she is either telling the truth or is a sociopath. Would you say the same thing applies to Clarence Thomas, that he's either telling the truth or he's a sociopath? Well,
I would say he's either telling the truth or something happened and he doesn't want to admit to it today. I don't think men who harass are sociopaths, which is different from coming forward out of the blue if you don't have a story that's true. But I think it is clear that the two of them, it's a head-on collision, that one is lying and one is telling the truth, and that's the bottom line. All of the attack on the Senate and Judge Thomas saying he's been lynched to try to draw up a civil rights analogy and suggest that what's happening to him is because of race and because people have treated him insensitively, I think goes over well in certain parts of the community. But bottom line is he lying or is she lying?
Professor King, candidly, if Clarence Thomas were white, do you think he'd already be approved?
Candidly, I think that we have handled Judge Thomas with kid gloves because of his race throughout these proceedings, not just this week, but during the confirmation hearings. And let me say that sometimes that worked in his favor and sometimes that worked against him. I think during the hearings it meant that he didn't get some hard questioning that a white person might have gotten. I think at other points it has certainly worked against him.
Would he have been nominated if he were white?
I don't think that anybody that has the qualifications that Clarence Thomas has would have been nominated, but for the fact that he's black. He is also very, very young. And I think it is doubtful that he would have been nominated if he had not been black. The president clearly wanted to replace Justice Marshall with a black person, and I think it was a very cynical appointment. It was successful in splitting the community.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but the hearing is beginning. We go live to the hearing room.
For the next round of questioning to the Senator from Vermont, Senator Leahy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, Judge. Judge, yesterday you said that in answer, I believe, to a question that you had not watched or listened to the 6 or 7 hours Professor Hill's testimony. Obviously under no requirement to do so, but I wonder if since then you've had either an opportunity to read or be briefed about what she said.
Senator, prior to coming here last night, I was briefed about much of what she said, and of course my wife watched significant portions of it and talked about some of the things that she had to say.
The reason I ask you may have followed a part of the testimony where she spoke about going to dinner with you at the time when she was leaving the EOC. Are you familiar with that part of her testimony?
Senator, I am familiar that she said that. I didn't see it. I was briefed that she said that.
Was there such a dinner?
Senator, I do not recall such a dinner. It was not unusual for me when a staffer was leaving to go to lunch or to dinner would be more unusual, but not out of the question. But it was not unusual to take them out and just simply say thank you. In later years, I know we had much bigger dinners. We'd have many members of the staff go out and be a cause for great celebration. But I don't specifically recall such a dinner.
Do you recall at any time ever taking Professor Hill out to dinner?
No, Senator.
Now, Judge, when in her testimony, in which she speaks of this dinner, she said that you had driven her to the restaurant. You did not recall the restaurant, said there for a period of time. You've heard, I'm sure, the conversation that she recounts has taken place. And then after you left and went on wherever you did, she took the subway home, again, according to her testimony. She said that the two of you went there in your car. You were assigned, I believe, a car and driver in your position. If that was so, would there be a log that the driver keeps of where he might drive you?
No, Senator. We did not keep logs. I used my driver more frequently in the early years and less frequently in my later years at EEOC, but we didn't have logs.
Even though if drivers work late, they get paid overtime, they don't keep logs of where they go?
Senator, my driver at that time worked with me late. He was on my personal staff. I don't think the driver today is on the personal staff. But the driver at EEOC was assigned to the chairman's office when I went on board and would still have been assigned to the chairman's office.
At the time that Professor Hill was talking about, just at the time when she was leaving the office, who would have been the driver?
Mr. Randall, James Randall, who's since retired.
Mr. James Randall?
Randall.
I'm sorry. Between the sound of the cameras clicking, Judge, and I still didn't hear the last name.
Mr. James Randall.
Randall. Thank you. But the bottom line is that, well, let me make sure I understand this. Professor Hill said the two of you went out to dinner as she was leaving. Professor Hill, of course, further alleges, and this would be a major and explosive matter, that you said something to her to the effect, if you ever tell about this, it will damage or destroy my career. Now, that was her statement. I want you to have a chance to give yours. Am I correct in understanding your testimony now that, one, you have no recollection of ever having such a conversation at any time? Is that correct?
No, I have no recollection of having dinner with her as she left, although I do not think that it would be unusual for me to have gone either to lunch or to particularly an early dinner with a member of my staff who was leaving. I would categorically deny that under any circumstances, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, that I made those statements.
So then it would be safe to say your testimony is any time, whether in a social, business, or any other setting, you never made the statement, if this comes out, it'd ruin my career, or anything even relating to that kind of a statement. Is that correct?
That's right.
Thank you. Now, I just want to make sure I understand this. We'll move on to another subject, but do you recollect ever going to dinner with Professor Hill? I understand you're saying it would not be unusual to go with a member of staff, but do you ever recollect going to dinner with her at all?
I don't recall, other than the once, I believe, we had dinner perhaps with Charles Cothe in Oklahoma subsequent to her leaving EEOC. I don't recall ever having gone to dinner with Professor Hill.
No, I understand that, and you have stated that before, but I'm just talking about the time when she was working there. You do not have any such?
No, I do not recall. Let me add one thing, Senator.
Certainly.
I occasionally, with my personal staff as well as with my clerks now, when I am going out to lunch, I will grab the first person available and say, is anybody ready for lunch? And walk out to either a local place or perhaps just a deli to grab a sandwich. That is customary with me. So that I don't want to suggest that there wasn't an occasion when I would do something like that.
Judge Thomas, if there wasn't, I can't imagine a member of the Senate who doesn't do the same thing and say to some of his staff, let's grab a sandwich, let's grab lunch, something like that, and continue discussion of whatever might be going on. That's, I don't think you speak to something unusual, nor do you suggest you do. Tell me, Judge, you said yesterday that there were a couple of occasions when you would go by Professor Hill's apartment, probably have a beer, continued discussions. Do you recall? I forgot which senator you would respond.
No, that isn't the way I said it, Senator. What I said
would you restate it the way you said it?
What I said was, when we were at the Department of Education, there were, as I recall, a number of instances in which I gave her a ride home, and she asked me just to drop in or to continue discussion, and I would have a Coke or a beer or something and leave. That was, again, nothing. I thought nothing of it. It was purely innocent on my part, and nothing occurred with respect to that, other than those conversations.
I'm not suggesting by the question there was anything that was not. I just wanted to make sure I understand this. That was only when you were at the Department of Education, is that correct?
Yes, that's the reason I recall that is because I lived in Southwest, and for a significant part of her tenure at EEOC, I did not have a personal car. And she lived nearby on Capitol Hill. The Switzer building is in Southwest, and I would just simply give her a ride to the other side of the hill.
Do you realize? Do you recall whereabouts on the hill she?
No, I do not.
Do you recall anything at all about the apartment and big, little?
Oh, it was.
Old, new.
She had a roommate, of course, and the area was that I remember was just a small living room type area where there was a TV and I think a small couch or something.
Okay. Do you remember whether it was an old building, new building?
I remember it as an old building or an older building. And a duplex, for some reason, a duplex sticks in my mind.
Now, Judge, you have spoken eloquently in the past of the kind of racial harassment and racial discrimination you faced growing up. A lesson perhaps for everybody when realizing that these are not some ancient things, with a man your age is speaking within a generation of it. Let me talk to you about, since you've been in the workforce about 20 years since leaving law school, have you ever witnessed sexual harassment firsthand?
Senator, I have witnessed incidents that I would consider sexual harassment and inappropriate conduct. And as chairman of the EEOC, particularly in the workforce there, I was adamant that this conduct would not take place. And anyone who's worked with me understands that. I was adamant that it would not take place.
And in that being adamant, how did you translate that to staff or people who work for you, or in statements, speeches, memos, personal? I mean, how would you do it, Judge?
If you engage in it, you will be fired. Simple.
It's the easiest way to have it.
If you engage in it, you will be fired.
We have a similar rule in my office for drug abuse and sexual harassment. You do it, you're gone.
Anyone who, and you will have witnesses who've worked with me, you ask them what my statements were. It was very simple. That is particularly easy on a personal staff, and it is particularly easy with Schedule C appointees.
Now, Judge, you said you witnessed sexual harassment firsthand. What was the nature of? Can you just give me some idea of the type that you've seen?
Well, the types of things are, again, people using graphic language to subordinates who are female or women. There would be individuals who would expect certain conduct on the part of women if they expect to stay in the workforce or to prosper. Those kinds of things I've seen either when I was not in a position to do anything about it, and I've heard about when I was in a position to do something about it. And in the latter instance, I did something about it.
Judge, it's probably a difficult thing to do here under the circumstances, but could you just step out of the role for a moment of being a Supreme Court nominee and think back to being head of the EEOC for a minute. You get a call from an investigator in a district office. He's just had a woman come in with a claim of sexual harassment. He relays the claim to you, and you look at it and say, yeah, this is. It fits all fours within the regulation statutes. And he says, but, Mr. Chairman, it was 5 years ago. Statutes run. What would you say to him?
Senator, that is certainly something that never occurred during my tenure. There were instances in which there were older charges of that nature. What we would generally find would be that the person involved would have engaged in a pattern of that kind of practice. If that person is a manager that we're talking about, you could find a pattern, and you can find more recent occurrences. To my knowledge, and again, I could be, this may not always be the case, but when you have a person who's engaged in grotesque conduct or harassing conduct, you will find more than one person. If the person has a habit of harassing secretaries, you will find a series of secretaries. If the person has a habit of harassing professional subordinates or other employees, you will find a series of those. You will not find generally just one isolated instance, and I think that would be the trigger to look for more instances of them.
Would it be unusual, though, to have the initial allegation be of something that happened some time back? I understand what you're saying about the pattern that you didn't reconstruct later, but would it be unusual to have the initial allegation of sex harassment be of some time past?
To my knowledge, Senator, and based on just what I've seen personally, it would be unusual.
Thank you.
Usually what you would have is you would have a recent occurrence that would trigger an inquiry, and then you would look back and you would see a pattern.
Now, back on the charges that Professor Hill made yesterday, one was a discussion of pornographic films with her. She stated this happened on a number of occasions, and that she had found it uncomfortable and asked you not to. Let me ask you. I mean, she's been asked whether this happened. Let me ask you. Did you ever have a discussion of pornographic films with Professor Hill?
Absolutely not.
Ever had with any other women?
Senator, I will not get into any discussions that I might have about my personal life or my sex life with any person outside of the workplace.
I'm not asking.
I will categorically say I have not had any such discussions with Professor Hill.
No. Please don't misunderstand my question, Judge. I am confining it to the workplace. I have no interest in what may be your personal life in this. That's yours. What I'm asking is she alleges within the workplace. And make sure I fully understand. I'm asking you this question so that you can give the answer. Am I correct in understanding your answer? Within the workplace, Professor Hill, you never had such a discussion.
That's right.
You never had such discussions within the workplace with any other women.
That's right.
Or anyone, for that matter.
That's right.
Thank you. Now, were you interviewed? Well, you were interviewed by the FBI. I mean, you've talked to, about that. Were you interviewed on? There seems to be some confusion. It's on September 28th by the FBI.
I don't know which day September. I was interviewed on Wednesday, I believe September 25th. I'm not sure.
I think we have some confusion. In your affidavit, it says, I told the Federal Bureau of Investigation on September 28, 1991. I categorically deny.
It's Wednesday.
Yeah, I've got a, it says date of transcription, the FBI, it says 9/28/91. It was faxed on September 25th, 91, and I'm just wondering if we have whether in about 5 different places on here the FBI have made a typographical error and have their dates off by 3 days. It was on a Wednesday.
It was on Wednesday.
Okay. When you had that discussion with them, did they ever mention, or did you ever mention to them going to her apartment at any time, to Professor Hill's apartment at any time?
I think I may have mentioned that I dropped her off at home, and I may have mentioned that I had been in her apartment. I can't remember.
Okay.
I don't think they were focusing on that. I think they were focusing more on whether or not the allegations that she made.
I understand. You said yesterday in your statement that I cannot imagine anything that I said or did to Anita Hill that could have been mistaken for sexual harassment. But with that said, if there is anything that I have said that has been misconstrued by Anita Hill or anyone else to be sexual harassment, then I can say that I'm so very sorry, and I wish I had known. If I did know, I would have stopped immediately, and I would not, as I've done over the past 2 weeks, I'd tear away at myself trying to think of what I could possibly have done, but I have not said or done the things that Anita Hill has alleged. I've heard people say, was there something further to that statement? I mean, can you think of anything? I mean, you say that if there was anything, then you're very sorry, but you're also saying you cannot think of anything that could have approached us. Is that correct?
That's right, Senator. I have agonized over this. This has not been an easy matter for me. And I don't know how or why she would say these things. I don't know what I could have done that would have resulted in this. And that is just to simply make that point, that if I did anything to anyone that would bring them to a point to suggest or to think that I engaged in sexual harassment, then I am sorry, because it is certainly conduct that I would not approve and conduct that I would not engage in.
Well, let me follow up on that a bit. You said you searched your mind for why you do this. Now, as I understand also your testimony, and I'm trying to give a summary, and please correct me if I'm inaccurate in the summary. You feel that you gave Professor Hill opportunities in government service, as you have others. Is that correct?
That's right.
And you have stated that you felt a particular responsibility, spoken really basically almost as family, the people that have worked for you in bringing them forward and giving them these opportunities. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator. It's in Professor Hill's case, and it's important to me that this be understood. I believe that when I have assistants or interns, that I have a personal responsibility for them. As teacher, advisor, not employer. I am the employer also, but they are my personal charges for whom I have responsibility. Anita Hill came to me through one of my dearest friends. He was the best man at my wedding. We were at Holy Cross College together. We were at Yale Law School together. We were the two slowest guys on the track team. We spent a lot of time together. We lived across the way from each other in law school. We lived together during the summer. When my marriage broke up, I slept at his apartment. This was my dearest friend. And when he brought her to my attention, it was a special responsibility that he asked me to take on. And I felt very strongly that I could discharge that in the way that I did, and that was to be careful about her career, to make sure she had opportunities, to be there to offer advice and counsel. And that's something that I continued with my other special assistants. They are family. My clerks are my family. They're my friends.
Well, then, having done all this for Professor Hill, and knowing now what she has said here and what you read, and hearing her statement under oath, explicit as it was, statement that you've adamantly, categorically denied, to use your term, why would she do this?
Senator, you know, I've asked myself that question, as I told you. I haven't slept very much in the last 2.5 weeks. I've thought unceasingly about this. And my wife simply said, stop torturing yourself. I don't know why family members turn on each other. I don't know why a son or a daughter or brother or sister would write some book that destroys a family. I don't know. All I can tell you is that from my standpoint, I felt that I did everything I could toward Professor Hill in the same way that I would do with my other special assistants to discharge my responsibilities. I don't know. I do not have the answer.
Have you had any conversation with her since this began? I mean, since these charges came out?
No, Senator.
No, I'm not trying to be facetious, Judge. I mean, was there any attempt at, not by you, was there any attempt at it by Professor Hill? Did she make any attempt to reach you?
Not to my knowledge. Senator, I have had no conversations with her since, to my knowledge, November of 1991.
So when did you first hear of these allegations?
When the FBI I first heard that there had been, in a call from the White House, allegations of an unspecified nature. which needed to be, and the FBI would be sent out. That was Wednesday morning, 28th or 25th. And that I was to contact the FBI agent or the FBI and set up an appointment. I did that, and the agent came out, I think, an hour and a half or 2 hours later. That first that I heard of the nature of the allegations was when the FBI agent, after identifying himself, informed me.
At your home?
At my home.
And were you there alone meeting with him, or?
I was there alone with 2 FBI agents.
Judge, what was your reaction? I mean, when you heard this, you're saying you heard this for the first time. What was your reaction?
Senator, my reaction was initially I was stunned. I was hurt. I was confused. I was pained. I didn't know what happened. I don't know where it came from. I didn't know what the basis of it was. I couldn't believe it. And when he said there is an allegation by Anita Hill, I think my words to him was, Anita? And then when he told me what the nature of the allegations were, I said, you can't, this, something like, you got to be kidding. This can't be true. I can't remember. All I can tell you is it's painful.
And there was no flash of, could she have misconstrued,
No.
fill in the blank, none of that?
No. It's just like, this is incredible. I can't believe it.
Have you now, I don't want to go through a repetition of them here, but have you now heard the specific charges that Professor Hill made yesterday during her 6 or 7 hours of testimony against you?
Senator, I have heard the initial charges through the FBI agent, and I've been briefed on the specific charges from yesterday that were different from the previous statements.
And Judge, what is your response to those specific charges again?
Senator, my response is that I categorically, unequivocally deny them.
Thank you.
They did not occur.
Incidentally, somebody just handed me a note, and I didn't miss this too, but you said your last contact with Professor Hill was November 1991.
I'm sorry, 1990.
1990. Yes.
I would have to be clairvoyant, I guess.
Well, Judge, I think that you and I may disagree on a number of things, but I think both of us would agree on one thing. Neither of us has been clairvoyant in these hearings or in this process. And I just, but you meant 1990.
1990.
Yeah. Have you spoken with any of the witnesses at this hearing within the last week? Or the witnesses that are going to be at this hearing?
I don't know. You have to give me each of the witnesses, Senator. I've spoken with friends of mine who were at EEOC, and there may be some of the witnesses. I've spoken to them in the halls here. They have called to wish me well. These are people who are like family to me. These are not, these are former special assistants, I believe, and individuals who were in the inner confines of my office. And again, as I indicated, my staff and I are family.
When do you know whether personnel from the White House have talked to witnesses who are going to appear here?
I would assume they coordinated their appearance here, Senator, so I would assume that the conversations did occur to make sure they were here and the timing, et cetera.
Thank you, Judge. My time is up, and I know Senator Hatch or Senator Biden, whoever will have time, and I'll probably come back later on.
Thank you. Senator Hatch.
Thank you, Chairman Biden. Judge, there are a lot of things that just don't make sense to me in Anita Hill's testimony. I liked her personally. I thought she presented herself well. There's no question she's a very intelligent law professor. She has graduated from one of the finest schools in the land, law schools that is, and her undergraduate work was exemplary. She clearly is a very intelligent woman. And I think everybody who listened to her wants to like her, and many do. But Judge, it bothers me because it just doesn't square with what I think is some of it doesn't square with what I think is common experience and just basic sense, common sense. I hesitate to do this again, but I think it's critical. And I know it outrages you, as it would me, as it would anybody who is accused of these type of activities. In her first statement on this issue, really given to the FBI and all over the press, all over the media, about 2 or 3 weeks after Thomas originally asked Hill for a date, he started talking about sex. He told her about his experiences and preferences and would ask her what she liked or if she had ever done the same thing. Hill said that he discussed oral sex between men and women. Thomas also discussed viewing films of people having sex with each other and with animals. He told her that he enjoyed watching the films and told her that she should see them. He never asked her to watch the films with him. Thomas liked to discuss specific sex acts and frequency of sex. That's allegation number 1, given in what I consider to be a pretty decent FBI investigation, pretty thorough, by a man and a woman, FBI agent. In the 4-page statement that she issued, which was, of course, leaked to the press by somebody on this committee, in violation of law, in violation of the Senate ethics, in violation of a stringent rule formulated because these FBI reports contain raw data. The information from the FBI report was released, and this statement was given. In fact, the reporter who broke the story read the statement to her according to her own remarks. She then said, in this statement, this is the second one, after brief discussion about work, he would turn the conversation to discussions about his sexual interests. His conversations were very vivid. He spoke about acts that he had seen in pornographic films involving such things as women having sex with animals and films involving group sex or rape scenes. He talked about pornographic materials depicting individuals with large penises or breasts involved in various sex acts. That's the second statement, which is considerably different from the first and adds some language in. And you've denied each and every one of these allegations last night. So I won't go through that again today, although if you want to say anything about it further, I'd be happy to have you do it. Then yesterday, she appeared before this committee, and in her statement yesterday, her written statement, of which I have a copy that was distributed to the press and everybody else, she said his conversations were very vivid. He spoke about acts that he had seen in pornographic films involving such matters as women having sex with animals and films showing group sex or rape scenes. He talked about pornographic materials depicting individuals with large penises or large breasts involved in various sex acts. On several occasions, Thomas told me graphically of his own sexual prowess. 3 different versions, each expansive, each successively expansive. Now, Judge Thomas, Anybody who made all of those cumulative statements, if you take one of them out of context, they're so graphic and so crude and so outrageous, and I think so stupid, that would be enough, in my opinion, to find sex harassment against anybody, if it happened. But if you had all of those cumulatively together, the person who would do something like that over a period of time, really a short period of time according to her, and twice, not twice, but in two different separate agencies, we'll put it that way, that person, it seems to me, would not be a normal person. That person, it seems to me, would be a psychopathic sex fiend or a pervert. Now, Judge, you've had to have thought about this. I know you're outraged by it, and you've denied all these things, and you've said these things did not happen. They are simply untrue. Now, you've had an evening to think about it. Do you have anything further to say about it?
Senator, my reaction to this has been, over the last 2 weeks, has been one of horror. I can't tell you what I've lived through. I can't tell you what my wife has lived through, or my family. I can't tell you what my son's lived through. I don't know what to tell him about this. If I were going to date someone outside of the workplace, I would certainly not approach anyone I was attempting to date as a person with this kind of grotesque language.
I have to interrupt you here, Judge, but there was an implication that you not only repetitively ask her for dates, I don't know, I guess that could be construed as sexual harassment, repetitively asking a woman for dates. But the implication was, and the clear implication which she spoke about, was that you wanted more than dates, if her allegations were true.
Senator, I did not ask her out, and I did not use that language. One of the things that has tormented me over the last 2.5 weeks has been, how do I defend myself against this kind of language and these kind of charges? How do I defend myself? That's what I asked the FBI agent, I believe, for the first time. It's what I've asked myself. How do I defend myself? If I use that kind of grotesque language with one person, it would seem to me that there would be traces of it throughout the employees who worked closely with me. There would be other individuals who heard it, or bits and pieces of it, or various levels of it.
Don't worry, Judge. Probably before the weekend's out, they'll find somebody who will say that.
Well, the difficulty also was that, from my standpoint, is that in this country, when it comes to sexual conduct, we still have underlying racial attitudes about black men and their views of sex. And once you pin that on me, I can't get it off. That is why I am so adamant in this committee about what has been done to me. I made it a point at EEOC and at education not to play into those stereotypes at all. I made it a point to have the people at those agencies, the black men, the black women, to conduct themselves in a way that was not consistent with those stereotypes. And I did the same thing myself.
When you talk in terms of stereotypes, I mean, what are you saying here? I mean, I want to understand this. First of all, let me get back to your first thought. You said that if you wanted to date somebody, or even if you wanted to seduce somebody, you didn't say that, but if somebody, just put yourself in the mind of this, if you had wanted to seduce her, is this kind of language you would use?
This would not be...
Is this kind of language a reasonable person would use? Is this kind of language anybody would use who wanted a relationship?
Outside of the workforce or outside of the workplace, that is not certainly the way that I would approach someone I would want to date. I would date that person for a long time or just go to a dinner. That is not my approach. And I think that, and I have to reiterate this, that for someone in the workforce to use that kind of grotesque language, it has to show up with other staff members. When we looked at sex harassment cases, when we looked at cases of people involved in unacceptable conduct of this nature, there was always a pattern. The other point that I'm making that is of great concern to me is that this is playing into a stereotype.
Before we get to that, Judge, because I am going to get to that, that's an interesting concept that you've just raised, and I promise I'll get back to it. You're a very intelligent man. There's no question about it. Anybody who watches you knows that. You couldn't have risen to these high positions in government, been confirmed 4 times by the august United States Senate, 3 times by the Labor Committee, upon which a number of us here on this committee served, and whose staff members were used in this investigation, and I might add, once now before the Judiciary Committee, august committees. She is an extremely intelligent woman. And from all appearances, a lovely human being. Do you think an intelligent African American male like you, or any other intelligent male, regardless of race, would use this kind of language to try to start a relationship with an intelligent, attractive woman?
Senator, I don't know anyone who would try to establish a relationship with that kind of language.
Unless they were sick.
I don't know of anyone.
I don't even know people who might have emotional disturbances who would try that. Now, I want to ask you about this intriguing thing you just said. You said some of this language is stereotype language?
Senator,
what does that mean? I don't understand.
Language throughout the history of this country, and certainly throughout my life, language about the sexual prowess of black men, language about the sex organs of black men and the sizes, etc. That kind of language has been used about black men as long as I've been on the face of this earth. And these are charges that play into racist, bigoted stereotypes. And these are the kind of charges that are impossible to wash off. And these are the kind of stereotypes that I have in my tenure in government and conduct of my affairs attempted to move away from and to convince people that we should conduct ourselves in a way that defies these stereotypes. But when you play into a stereotype, it's as though you're skiing downhill. There's no way to stop it. And this plays into the most bigoted, racist stereotypes that any black man will face.
Well, I didn't understand the television program, but there were 2 black men. I may have it wrong, but as I recall, there were 2 black men talking about this matter, and one of them said, "She's trying to demonize us." I didn't understand it at the time. Do you understand that?
Well, I understand it, and any black man in this country. Senator, in the 1970s, I became very interested in the issue of lynching. And if you want to track through this country in the 19th and 20th century, the lynchings of black men, you will see that there is invariably, or in many instances, a relationship with sex. An accusation that that person cannot shake off. That is the point that I'm trying to make. And that is the point that I was making last night, that this is high-tech lynching. I cannot shake off these accusations because they play to the worst stereotypes we have about black men in this country.
Well, this bothers me. Bothers me. I can see why. Let me. I hate to do this, but let me ask you some tough questions. You've talked about stereotypes used against black males in this society. In this first statement, he told her about his experiences and preferences, would ask her what she liked or if she had ever done the same thing. Is that a black stereotype?
No.
Okay. Hill said that he discussed oral sex between men and women. Is that a black stereotype?
No.
Okay. Thomas also discussed viewing films of people having sex with each other and with animals. What about that?
That's not a stereotype about blacks.
Okay. He told her that he enjoyed watching the films and told her that she should see them. Is watching X-rated films or pornographic films, is that a stereotype?
No.
He never asked her to watch the films with him. Thomas liked to discuss specific sex acts and frequency of sex.
No, I don't think so. I think the last frequency could have to do with black men supposedly being very promiscuous or something like that.
So it could be partially stereotypical then.
Yeah.
In the next statement, she said his conversations were very vivid. He spoke about acts that he had seen in pornographic films involving such things as women having sex with animals, and films involving group sex or rape scenes. He talked about pornographic materials depicting individuals with large penises or breasts involved in various sex acts. What about those things?
I think certainly the size of sexual organs would be something.
Well, I'm concerned.